Tell me a fact and I'll learn. Tell me a truth and I'll believe. But tell me a story and it will live in my heart forever. The Names Not Numbers Oral History Film Documentary Project is remembering the stories of the Holocaust and is telling the story of the Holocaust for the world to hear, for the world to learn, and to inspire future generations to combat anti-Semitism and all forms of hatred and intolerance. This unique project is in its 16th year. Over 2,500 survivors and 6,000 students have participated in it worldwide. The students were instructed by teachers and professionals. They learned interviewing techniques from journalists. They learned filming techniques and editing skills from documentary filmmakers. The students interviewed, filmed, and edited the 2-hour interviews with each survivor to make 20-minute oral histories that are compiled in the Names Not Numbers documentary at the school. You're about to view the documentary Names Not Numbers, a movie in the making. This film chronicles the students as they are being trained by the professionals and includes their reflections. In it is embedded approximately 10 minutes from each interview. This is the students' work. They're filmed and edited interviews. Through this project, our students are preserving history, and they are the witnesses to the witnesses.
You had to make a choice. Choiceless choices. It was a matter of life and death, as simple as that.
You lived second by second by second, and you tried to make yourself invisible.
So my father was begging the men to let us go and take them.
That was one of the most moving moments in my life, to actually see my name in the roster of the people that were murdered.
The other 38 people, they were taken to the Danube and they were shot into the river.
An order was given for all mothers who had babies under the age of 3 to put the babies down on the ground and walk away from their child.
We had no names, just numbers.
These stories live inside of me.
We are still barely, and I mean barely, in the last generation of people who can hear directly from survivors of the Holocaust. Each and every one of you has a responsibility to the next generation to record these remarkable stories, because there's no better way or other way for us to truly understand the horror and what it meant for 6 million Jews to be murdered.
Today, 75 years after the end of the Holocaust, 31% of all Americans believe that 2 million or fewer Jews were killed in the Holocaust. When living history becomes a memory, it will be you, the students who participated in Names Not Numbers. You will remember the days of old, Zachor Yemot Olam.
You need to know our history so you can make sure that you are the voices of conscience, because you are going to walk into spaces in high school, in university, and beyond where people will not have had this experience. People will not know these stories. And we will turn to you to be the ones to share those stories and to say, I know it because I spoke to someone firsthand who lived it.
Today we were introduced to the project Names Not Numbers. It's a documentary where we get to interview Holocaust survivors and learn about their story.
An interview is not a conversation between two people. I think of it more as a fishing expedition because you're walking into it, hopefully having done your research. You already know the biographical and the chronological story before you sit down to talk to them. And if you know that, then you can get to the actual point of the interview, which is the only reason you should ever talk to somebody about their experience, to get to the emotion. You have to feel for a couple of moments that they're right back there. You've taken them to a place where they're really remembering how it felt.
You need to let there be silence. You need to wait for them to kind of think and go deeper into their own story, to fill the silence and to eventually share more than what a question can get.
Today we learned about different filming techniques and how to operate a camera.
With the camera, you can do a lot of different things. You can do pan and tilt, which is up and down and right to left.
You would want to use a close-up shot when you want to capture something important, maybe something emotional that you want to really capture.
I'm pretty excited to hear different perspectives on different people's journeys through the Shoah and learn about what it was like for them.
My name is Howard Chandler. I was born in Poland in a small town called Wierzmik. My father was a merchant, as far as I knew. My mother and my grandfather were running a store. We were three boys and one girl in the family. The general population of the town was about 20 to 25,000, I believe, and the Jewish community consisted of about 3,500 people. Anti-Semitism was a way of life. We lived in a neighborhood where it was mixed with Christians and Jews, and we used to go to school in groups so the Christian kids didn't attack you. This is how life went on.
My name is Rini Friedman. I was born in Holland in 1937. I have a twin brother. My mother was from Germany. My father was from Poland. They met when my mother was 15. My dad was 25, and they had a little trouble. My father he went to work every day. He was selling what they called those days schmatzes. My mother was a housewife because she had two little ones. My dad used to bring home a little dog for the kids, and the dog had a bone. And we went under the table, all three of us, and we were licking the bone. That was the end of the dog. My mother said, "Take that dog back where you got it." I mean, those things that I remember. Shabbat was Shabbat. My dad used to go to synagogue Friday night and took us with him. My mother was not religious. We were brought up traditional, but we did go to shul, and that's our normal life at that time.
My name is Victor Malkars. I was born in Magnitogorsk, Russia on June the 4th, 1945. My father's name was Israel, and my mother's name was Hannah. My sister's name was Rose, and my younger brother's name was Shire. My parents never discussed the Holocaust. That was a closed subject, and they never spoke about it. All I know is that my mom came from a small town called Berzin, and my dad was born in Lodz. Where they met, I don't know. They got married, and at the age of 20, they got on a train and took a month to go to Siberia, where I was born.
My name is Georgine Nash. I was born in Budapest, Hungary. My father was working in the hydro main office. A wonderful father, a wonderful husband, a great sportsman, a good provider. And my mother was staying with me at home and looking after me and really pampered by my father. My parents were very, very social before the war. I remember having a lot of parties at home, people coming and sending me out of the room because I was not to be there too. They were very social and they had a lot of friends. And my life was very, very pleasant before the war.
My name is Andy Reti. I was born in Budapest, Hungary in 1942. Before the war, our family were ordinary working people. My mother was a seamstress. My father, he was a swimming instructor. The day I was born, I was told that there was no bed for my mother in the hospital because by that time anti-Semitism was raging. In fact, my mother gave birth to me on the floor. I had jaundice, and my mother overheard a passing doctor said, don't worry about it, it's just a little Jewish bastard. Doesn't matter whether he lives or dies. My parents lived together with my paternal grandparents. My grandfather was a committed communist. He did not believe in religion. We did not observe Shabbat and the traditional Jewish holidays. I did have a bar mitzvah, which my grandfather did not attend.
My first name is Eva. I was born in 1930 on February 15th. I was the so-called single child. My father was a lawyer. He was an educated person. My mother, she was looking after her small child myself, Eva. It was a very happy husband and wife relationship between my parents.
I was born in Łódź, Poland, and I was born in 1932. We were a very religious Hasidic family, winemakers for 400 years in Poland. We didn't go to synagogues, we had shtibels. Every Friday, my father used to invite people to come to our apartment, which was only on the second floor in the same building. My mother used to prepare cholent for Shabbos, and we used to take it to the baker. Saturday, after davening, we used to go run to the baker and collect it, and it was beautiful, and it was a very nice life.
My name is Irene Kurtz, K-U-R-T-Z. I was born 2nd of February, 1928 in Warsaw, Poland. I had a very happy childhood. I had a mother and father who loved me very much, and I loved them very much. I had 2 brothers and a little sister. My father was in business, and he was very successful. The love what I had for my father, I still cherish it. My mother, she was a little bit more busy preparing for the kids, but always loving, taking care, hugged me, kissed me, and asked me what I did in school. Special Passover was my favorite holiday, to help my mother to prepare for the Seder, to take out the wine glasses and all the other preparation. And I loved the matzah. It wasn't a rich life, but was a happy life.
I was like both nervous and excited because I've never done anything like this. This is like a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
Just writing something down, it tells a story, but it's more of that names versus numbers. It's more of a statistic. But when it's a video, you see the person, you hear the person, and it's more meaningful, it's more personal. Watching the video kind of changes the perspective, adds emotion, and it adds, it shows that all of this is real.
To me, it was an adventure. When the Germans came in and they occupied the market square with tanks and trucks and whatever vehicles, and it was very impressive. Things did change. We were made to wear an armband, a white armband with a blue Star of David on it. The Germans helped themselves to the stores. Hunger broke out. Groceries were not readily available anymore. And then they restricted the movement of the Jews. It was a perimeter, it was a small ghetto. Luckily, our house was part of the ghetto, so we didn't have to move. It was crowded. Sanitary conditions were getting worse. People were brought in from other towns where Jews could live no more, so we had to share what we had with them. There was no radio, and there was no people coming and going. So whatever we heard, it was rumors, believe it or not. And the rumors were that they were taking people, putting them on trains, and away they went. Nobody knew where to. So because we had ammunition factories in town, Jewish people volunteered to work in these ammunition factories. The thinking behind that was, if you become useful to the German war effort, if there's an expulsion, it will not happen to these people who will be working in these ammunition factories. And it made sense. So my father got a work permit. They separated those who were holding these work permits. I was challenged why I'm going to stand with the working people because I was a small boy. This man came over to me. He said, "Who are you?" I said, "I'm Leibke's boy." "Oh," he says, "a good boy, he's a good worker." And he let me join the people who held these work permits and to stand together with the working people. Other boys my age also had work permits. He tore their permits to pieces and sent them back. These boys, together with all the non-working people whose permits were not honored, went together with the whole Jewish population. They were marched down to the train, taken away to places unknown, including my mother and my older sister. The work was not easy, especially for a boy my age. Food was terrible, terrible, terrible. We were hungry all the time, all the time. One day our gang was assigned to fix the railway line. And since I was a native, I knew the town in and out because me and my gang of boys, we knew what's going around our town. And I could see the guard was not so bright, and I just took off. I slipped away. And I ran to the forest. The forest was not very far from there. What do I do now? What do I do now? Another thing, very important, is if you escaped, and they found out that somebody from camp escaped, they would take 10 people from the camp and shoot them. The first people they would shoot is you had relatives left there. So I had a father and a brother there. So it hit me, they're going to take my father, they're going to take my brother, they're going to take eight other people and shoot them. What decisions would I have to make then? What decisions would you do? I'm no philosopher now. Certainly not a philosopher then. You had to make a choice. Choiceless choices. You never knew. What you would do will turn out for the good and what would not. And every choice was not a matter of this or that. It was a matter of life and death, as simple as that. So I decided I'm going to run back. So I had to figure out, how am I going back into the factory when the gates are closed? And I threw myself at the mercy of the Ukrainian guard. I started to cry. I said I fell asleep at work, and I want to go back. Usually they shot you. Luckily, he beat the hell out of me, and he let me go. In 1944, in the summertime, they brought in a train, and we were loaded up on that train, and off we went. We didn't know where to. And we traveled and we traveled and we traveled until we opened the train gates, and we looked around and we saw very strange surroundings. Chimneys spewing smoke, and it stunk from flesh. And this was Auschwitz. We never heard about Auschwitz, and we didn't know what Auschwitz was all about. And I arrived there together with my brother and my father. We were tattooed with a number, A19831. That they depended on the numbers to know who you are, where you are, and what you are for. So what's the use of going on there? We will never survive the war. And we were so dejected, thinking, the sooner they will do away with us, the better we'll stop suffering. We stop suffering.
I think we were about 4.5, 5, when everything was getting a little stirred up. The Germans came with papers saying, this and this day, you're going to be picked up. But my mother was a stubborn lady, and she didn't like what she heard. And we went from Holland to the border. I still see it. It was like you went down the road, and then you had a little boat, a rowboat, that took us across, and then we had to walk up, and we were in Belgium. No fear whatsoever. I had my parents. We had our parents. But then it became a little more fearful. We could see the farm where we had to go. As we were walking, my dad took off the yellow stars. He threw away papers in the field. Unfortunately, at that point, we saw a bicycle coming. A Belgian policeman. My dad was very honest. I just throw away the papers. We're Jewish. If you want to take anybody, take my wife and me. Let the kids go. We were twins, and they had heard rumors, what they did to the twins. So my father was begging the man to let us go and take them. But the man was very kind, apparently. He said to my father, you know, I didn't see you, you didn't see me. Turned around, and that was it. So that was our first lucky day. We were so trained as children. If there was a car in front of your house, you don't come in the house. Could be the Germans. So I saw a car in front of my grandmother's, and I waited. And then all of a sudden, my grandmother came out with these two guys, and they were going towards the car. My grandmother looked down the street, and who was coming? Her son. And instead of saying nothing, my grandmother called his name, and she said, Siegfried, lauf, which means, Siegfried, run. And he turned around and started running. He didn't get very far because he shot him in the leg. And I'm standing there watching all this happening. They went to pick up my uncle, put him in the car with his mother, and that was the last time we saw them. My parents had no more money, so my mother decided she was going to go to work as a chambermaid. It was fine for a while. One day she walked in, the Gestapo, a man was with them, and he pointed my mother out as a Jewess. So they started interviewing my mother. Who are you? Are you married? Do you have children? She said, no, no children, not married. She forgot. She had her wedding ring on. And this is the wedding ring that I'm wearing now. Because she was near the wall, she decided to put her hands behind her back and drop the ring. At the end, she gave in, and she told her who she was. And of course, they took her. After they came to my father to explain what happened to my mom, The underground people decided that my dad was not able to take care of two little kids. Arrangements were made, and we were separated. I was very close with my father, and they took me away from my father, not knowing. They just said, "You're gonna go with this man, and we'll see you later." As time goes by, I became Catholic girl. You know, I did everything what everybody else did. Didn't know who I was. Didn't know that I was Catholic or Jewish. I didn't. I was one of the children.
Poland, September 1939. The German foe begins its ruthless march of conquest.
My parents were living in Lodz, Poland, when the Germans invaded. My dad was involved in a march, and he was shot by the Germans, but he was shot through the leg. And he lay on the ground in a pool of blood and didn't move. And when the Germans left, he got up and he said, "Okay, I am leaving this country," while the borders were still open. In those days, you just didn't go away with a woman didn't go away with a man without being married. So they got married, and my mom said they got married, and their honeymoon was a month on the train from Lodz to Magnitogorsk, Russia, which is in Siberia. My parents never talked about their life. Just I was able to sort of extract some little vignettes of information from them, but life was difficult. My dad was a very skilled tool and die maker, and he worked on the first fins for the Katyusha rockets. He also said that the way things were paid for was with bottles of vodka rather than rubles. My parents were in Russia from 1939 to 1945 when I was born. 6 months later, they left Russia and moved back to Poland to see if anything was left, and their entire family had been murdered by the Germans. I consider myself very lucky that my parents had the foresight to leave Poland when they did, because had they waited, as their entire families did, I wouldn't be around.
When the Germans occupied Hungary, that was actually in 1944, and that's when all hell broke loose for the Jews of Budapest. The first thing was that we were all ordered to wear the Jewish star that had to be sewn on to every garment a Jew wore. The first morning, my father had to go to work with this big star on his winter coat. He was so self-conscious and he was so embarrassed that he left very, very early in the morning so nobody should see him. And when he finally got to his place of work, his boss said, "Well, you don't have to wear it in here, don't worry about it." I, as a 7-year-old child, probably thought not much of it, but I could see that my parents were very upset and dismayed about it. But that was just the very first thing, because very soon after that, we have to move into a so-called Jewish house. A Jewish house was a big apartment building in Budapest. There were 3,000 of these houses all over the city. We moved into with my mother's friends, and there were already another family there, so there were 3 families now in this apartment. At this time, I was only living with my mother in the Jewish house. My father was in labor camp. I wasn't really scared. I thought actually it was interesting, it was kind of fun, but by this time, the bombings were constant. And one of these times when we were in the bomb shelter, our building got a direct hit. Half the building was destroyed. The kids went up and they saw that there was a room on the top of the building, the part that was not totally destroyed. There was a bomb sitting in an armchair in that room. And we all went up to see this bomb, not realizing that this bomb could go off any minute, if it wanted to. I did not realize the severity of what was going on. It was kind of fun to find a bomb in the armchair, like how many times do you get to see a bomb in an armchair? But I did know that my life was changed completely. We moved into a so-called protected house, which was under the protection of the Swiss government in one big room. 40 people were living there. We were in this protected house until one day an aerocross soldier came up to the apartment and ordered everybody to go downstairs for roll call. My mother had the presence of mind to say that, "I'm so sorry, but my child is very ill. She has high fever. Would you mind just count us here so we don't have to go down?" And the other people, the other 38 people who went downstairs never came back up. They were taken to the Danube and they were shot into the river. I mean, had we gone down, I would not be talking to you. Going into hiding is easier said than done. Hiding a Jew was one of the most dangerous things anyone could have done. Because if you were hiding a Jew and it were discovered, you would have been killed as well as the Jew. My parents knew a couple who were just newly wed, that my parents brought them together, and they told my parents that we are so grateful. How could we ever show our gratitude to you? So my mother said, we are going to their place and we're going to hide there. Rang the bell and the guy came out and said, "Oh, you're here, you're fine, I'm so happy to see you." And my mother said, "Yes, but could we please stay with you?" And the man said, "Let me talk to my wife." He went in, and after a while he came out and he was crying. He was tears streaming down his face, and he said, "I'm so terribly sorry, but she's not going to let you come in. We are just starting a new life, and we cannot take the chance. So what do we do now?" Because of the bombings, we always had to go down. And one day, when we were in the basement, a guy walked up to my mother and greeted her by her real name. My mother said, "I don't know what you're talking about, you're mistaken." And the guy was insisting, "I remember your husband, you have a little girl." And my mother said, "I'm so sorry, but I don't know who you're talking about." But after this episode, the old lady said, "I'm so sorry, but you cannot come down. You have to stay up." While there were bombings, I was scared. And when we were in the apartment and there was bombings, I was really scared because it's not normal for a building to be weaving around, so I did not feel safe during the bombings. I don't think I ever considered whether I am going to come out of it alive or not. I was worried that will be discovered and that's going to be bad. I never thought about the good stuff, how I'm going to feel if I don't get killed. I don't think that at age 7 you kind of figure these things out. I didn't anyway.
The start of the war for my family was when my father and grandfather were conscripted into the labor battalion of the Hungarian army. My mother and grandmother and I were alone. We had a knock on the door and young thugs with guns, accompanied by police, gave us 5 minutes to pack up and move out. And that day was one of the worst days of our family's life because we had no idea what was going to happen to us once we were forced out of our home at the end of a gun. An order was given for all mothers who had babies under the age of 3 to put the babies down on the ground and walk away from their child. You can imagine the incredible crying and anxious moments that followed. In fact, some babies were trampled to death right then and there. But my grandmother, who saw this, picked me up and carried me away. Eventually, we ended up in a ghetto. Originally, we were allowed to take food into the ghetto with us. But once the gates of the ghetto were closed, nobody in or out, food was getting less and less. We had 27 people in a 2-room apartment. 6 of them were children under the age of 7. I was together with my mother and she was together with her best friend who also had a young child, and the two mothers were able to commandeer a fold-out Chesterfield, and the mothers had the two babies between them, and the two babies were sleeping, touching feet to feet. And my little friend Katie had the coldest feet in the universe. I remember that. Children are a little bit more difficult to handle during times of crises. And as I said, everybody was hungry all the time. So storytelling and reading was a very, very predominant tool by which parents or grandparents could keep their children from crying. I was no different. Hence, my love of books, stories, and telling stories. We were in a ghetto from the end of October 1944 till January 18, 1945.
It could have been any day of the week. It certainly was a, so to speak, normal week. When I was at school, the teacher stood up in the second hour and said, "I have a very important announcement. The German troops just came to Budapest in big numbers and will settle in the city. They would also look first and foremost if they can see on the street any Jewish people who they would be happy to shoot. When they suspected only that I was Jewish, when I passed him by, he had a chance to kill me, to shoot at me. And it happened almost several times a day. It was terribly, terribly shocking. Grandmother had a glass of wine. We used any kind of means to get away from any closeness to Hungarian soldiers or German soldiers who had means to kill us. Yuliska was a Catholic friend who was protecting me in her home. The way I was in the convent was a typical situation. The nuns didn't know what papers I had, because if they were knowing it, they would not have agreed to allow me to come through the door and escape with them. One reason is because some of them themselves didn't like Jews and would have been happy if they could have thrown me out and watching me falling on the street, perhaps. You know, it's so hard for me to tell you the possible events or the real events, because for one sad situation or dangerous situation, I could immediately give you 5 other dangerous situations, 3 of which were tried on me. The other 2 were tried on other people. These stories live inside of me.
On the 1st of September 1939, the Nazis invaded Poland for no rhyme, for no reason, just because they wanted to. We were in turmoil. The community was in turmoil. Everybody was almost tearing their hair out. They started immediately having rules against the Jews. We had to give up our bicycles. They closed our bank accounts. You could only get a certain amount of money once a week. We had a special curfew. We had to give up the radios. We had to give up jewelry. You had to walk in the middle of the road. You couldn't use the pavement. And we were terrified. After about a couple of weeks, there was a ring at the door. So my father let them in, and there were these two black uniformed people with a death head in their caps, and they took my father down to the cellar. They beat him up so badly that they thought that they killed him, and then they told the military police of the German army would come and help themselves. I was told later on 11,000 bottles of wine ready, and they took it all away. And they broke the vats, and they took it with jerrycans. They just destroyed something that was there for 80, 90 years. In September of 1940, they started organizing a ghetto in Warsaw. The ghetto was apocalyptic hell, where people died on a daily basis because our rations was 180 calories a day per person. A Kit Kat. My father started making wine from raisins so that we could make a living. I would stand in front of a cafe where I went to collect bottles, and there was a dead body next to me. At the same time, inside, people were drinking and dancing and music, and it was an absolute hell on earth. Close to 100,000 people died in the 2.5 years in the Warsaw Ghetto. In 1942, placards appeared on the walls that those people that are unemployed, people that are ill, are going to go to a better place. They didn't use the word deportation, they used relocation. So my father hid us. We dug a bunker. For 3 weeks, we hid in there. And despite the fact that people were being killed, people were dying, we never forgot our religion. We never forgot our beings. We never forgot where we came from. We had a Seder in that bunker. And then after 3 weeks, in the first week of May, we were discovered, taken to the Umschlagplatz, and deported to a place called Majdanek in Lublin. They separated men from women, women from children, children on their own. I was watching my mother and my sister who were separated, and I watched her braid. She had this big blonde braid. I watched it, and then she hugged my mother, and I was watching the braid. And after that, after living together, born together, and doing everything together, walking with the children together. She was on one side of the children, and I was on the other side of the children. Now, I know she's walking, but I can't remember anything about her except the braid. And when I first time I told it, I broke down because it hurt me so much. Because I've got pictures of my parents, I've got pictures of a lot of my family, but I can't remember my twin sister. My father was running in front of me, and I was running behind him, and there was a man with a white coat and a stick and pushing right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left. I walked into a room, and I saw shower heads, and I knew that shower heads were being disguised gas chambers. So I started saying Shema Yisrael and my prayers because I knew I was going to die. But in my case, water came out. And I was taken as a slave laborer. I didn't understand. I was in an existence which is extremely difficult to explain or to try and make it real, because everything was completely unreal. When I found out that my parents were murdered, I became like a cocoon. I tried to make myself invisible. Any guard could take out his revolver and shoot you or beat you to death or send you to the gas chamber. So you lived second by second by second. And my brain wasn't developed yet. I was a child. I wasn't thinking. I was existing. They told us that they're evacuating us and they made us walk. And we were on a death march because they didn't give you any food, they didn't give you any water. And if you couldn't keep up, then they would shoot you. Half of us only arrived in Theresienstadt.
I remember one day, my mother, myself, my sister were in the apartment, and we heard a huge knock at the door. I still remember where I was standing, and we heard a knock, and my mother was scared to open the door, kicked the door open, and slapped my mother's face. So my sister and I, we started to cry. So he said, why wouldn't you open the door? So my mother said, you see, the kids are crying. He asked, is there any man here? So my mother said, no. My mother said, thanks God, Dad is not here, and your brothers are not here, they would have killed them. How scared we were. No matter how much I will say, it's unbelievable what we went through. Most of the time, we were in the bunker. The bunker was in our apartment, but lots of people came. And one day, my father talked to the other people and said, you know, tonight would be the first Seder. Let's do the Seder. So we had this beautiful, beautiful Passover tablecloth, and my father knew I loved to prepare the wine glasses. And one glass fell, and I tried to grab the glass, and I cut my finger, and the blood started to run. So I ran to the sink. Then my father stops me, don't. I said, but the blood is running. He takes a glass, puts a glass of water. He said, now put your finger in the glass. It came red. He said, see, now you brought us wine. And everybody brought whatever they had, something, little things, not much. And soon my father opens the Aguda, starts to say the prayers, opens the second page. He stands up from the table and starts to dance around with joy. It's Pesach, it's a miracle. He runs around the table. Everybody looked at each other, maybe he lost his mind. I said, Dad, please, let's finish the Seder. I'm scared. Why are you so happy about it? He opens the Aguda shows, he finds a piece of matzah. The matzah was maybe a couple of years in the Aguda. That was the miracle. So he says, see, you brought us the wine, and I have the matzah, we have a real Seder. So I went into the bunker. I couldn't stand it anymore. I went over to this lady, her name was Stella. I said, Stella, I would like to go out from here. She said, but I promise you, Father, I will take care of you. I cannot let you go out. After a couple of days, she calls me over. She said, you still want to go out? Yes, Stella, yes, but you have to promise me you'll be very, very careful. I said, I will. She hugged me. She opens the door, and I go out. I looked around. I didn't see no way out. My hair started to burn, my shoes. I want to go back to the bunker, but I couldn't find the door. I hear her name Stella was Stella. She calls me. Yirka, Stella, I'm here. She said, don't move, I'm coming. It was 2 windows, but very, very high. I couldn't even reach it to touch the windows. They pulled me out. We are out. Sunny day. We don't see no Germans, no people, complete nobody. I said to Stella, maybe the war is already over. We don't see nobody, no Germans. Then I felt something touching my shoulder. I turn my head. 2 Germans with the rifles on my shoulder. And they make us walk. I walked on this side. Stella with the 2 children a little bit. They didn't let us walk together. On the other side, walking. The little kids holding on to their mother's skirt. While we were walking, I said, Stella, I don't want to die. I'm so young to die. She didn't say anything because she knew what's gonna happen. So while we were walking, the Germans with the rifles, and they want to take away from Stella the 2 kids. So she wouldn't let them. So they killed the kids and her. I was on this side, on the right side. I didn't walk on my feet. They pushed us with the rifles, pushed us. I wanted to die together with Stella, but I couldn't move till they threw us on the wagons. And I felt so guilty. Because of me, she came out from the bunker. Finally, we came to Majdanek. And Majdanek was just mud and stones and those gas chambers. No food, no water, no washrooms, and rain, almost naked. What I saw there in my young years, I don't wish on nobody. We had no names, just numbers.
The number really, like, that was, I didn't even know he had a number, and then he showed us the number, and it just, like, it kind of puts you in a state of mind where you're like, this actually happened. All of the stories that, you know, you're hearing, he actually experienced that. Like, he experienced the horrible conditions of Auschwitz and labor camps and the discrimination at the time for Jews and just a lot of people, and he actually experienced it. He was in the moment.
It was really meaningful to be able to sit here in person and ask him questions that I had thought of, that I had written down to want to get to know. To be able to sit here and have a conversation with him was very meaningful to me. I know that what they went through in the 30s, it was real, and it was scary for them, and I got to see his raw reactions while I was sitting there.
Our survivor, he was speaking about how mothers were going to have to leave their children alone and they would just have to get separated. And that just kind of broke my heart. Because I can't imagine, like, the feeling of a mother being forced to leave her child, not knowing if they're ever going to see their child again.
So we looked down and we saw a Russian soldier on a motorcycle. And I think at that time, I might have been indifferent already. I couldn't grasp the meaning of being free. All you think of where's the food? You have no imagination what it means to be hungry for such length of time. It was exceptional that 2 people from my family survived. When I close my eyes and look around, the people in my hometown, there lived this family, and there lived this family, and there lived this family, my friends, my cousins, and my uncles. Nobody's around, nobody survived. And these are the people that we have to remember. Nobody likes to be forgotten.
After the war was over, my father, when it was safe, came to pick me up. And Mother Superior explained to me that this is my father. I didn't know what a father was. The father was the priest. Mother was Mother Superior. When she told me that he's going to take me, I said, no, I'm not going with this man. I don't know this man. Where am I going? So Mother Superior translated to me that he was going to take me to a place where I used to live. So with time, my father was mother and father to us. And it's one regret that I have, that I never knew where I was hidden, because if I had known the address, the convent, I would have gone back. I would have taken the names of the nuns and the priests and registered at the Yad Vashem, because they saved my life.
The Germans were offering reparations, so my parents moved to Germany in a town called Heidenheim, and we lived in a DP camp for 3 years. It was sort of a holding tank for people who had gone to Germany after the war. My dad taught at an art school in Heidenheim, teaching tool die making and locksmithing. In 1949, they moved to Israel. We traveled on a boat, and it was cold. Life in Israel was very difficult. We lived in tents. Then we moved to a one-bedroom cabin, wooden cabin with, again, no toilet facilities, no running water. And lastly, we moved into a one-bedroom, I called it the bunker. Life was difficult. My mom used to line up she used to have rations. There would be tickets, little coupons to get food, and she would come home crying because she couldn't get enough food for her family. I didn't know how difficult life was because I was a kid. We always had some sort of food. When my parents decided to leave Israel, we traveled. It was a 7-day trip on the ship called Atlantic, and it was a huge storm, and there were about 30-foot waves, and people were so sick. We landed in Halifax, and we took a train all the way to Toronto. And I remember when we got off at Union Station, my dad's cousin's husband greeted, and they were crying and jumping and kissing each other, and the rest is good life. When I was visiting Berlin, we went to the Holocaust Museum, and there they have a registry of all the people that were murdered in the concentration camps. So I spoke to the clerk, and it was a young man, and he checked on the computer, and he said, "Oh, Victor Moncars, here you are. Oh, here's the name." And it was in Auschwitz in 1942 that Victor Moncars, my uncle, was murdered. That was one of the most moving moments in my life, to actually see my name in the roster of the people that were murdered.
Liberation for me happened at the beginning of January. They liberated the street where I lived. That meant that I could leave the coal cellar, and I was going to be free. Budapest was destroyed, and we had relatives in another town called Szeged, and they said, "Absolutely come, and we'll be happy to help you out." So we got down to this place called Szeged, where it seemed like they never were touched by the war. It was just beautiful.
The day we were liberated was January 18, 1945, and my only memory of that day is the food that was given to me by a Russian soldier. I was with my immediate family, my grandparents, my mother, and myself, and with some of the people that were taken from our own apartment building, which we were able to return to.
I was liberated on the 8th of May 1945. Collaborators, who were, the police, the gendarmes, and they would guard our gates. So they ran away, and the SS ran away, and then we ran out. Me and everybody that was strong, we ran out to see what's happening. And we saw the Czechs.
We didn't see no Germans. We couldn't believe it. And then how we were liberated, middle of the night. Very little clothes, almost barefoot. How you go from here? Where do you go here? Then a young gentleman approached us. He said, "Are you Jewish? Are you survivors?" We said, "Yes." "Do you have a place where to go?" I said, "We just came out from the camp." So he told us There is one lady, and she has a little room, and she's a very nice girl. Name of the street, Warszawska 41. We knocked at the door. She opened the door. She said, "Come on in."
One of the words that appears the most times in the Torah is the word zachor, to remember. Hopefully, in the few hours that each of you shared with a different Holocaust survivor, there will be certain stories, certain moments, and certain emotions that you will remember for the rest of your life. Now the question is, what are you going to do with those memories? What stood out for you? What surprised you? What are you going to remember from this week?
To think that you were sitting down with a Holocaust survivor asking them questions is pretty incredible, considering that we're like the last generation that's going to be able to talk to these people in person. So it's just a memory that I'm never going to forget.
When I saw my Holocaust survivor shed a tear or even laugh a little when something funny happened, I felt more connected and inspired to his story.
She was our age when that happened. It's like, if I'm ever stressed about something, like if I'm stressed about a test, and it's like, it's nowhere near that bad, where like, and I'm like, my life isn't in danger, or like getting a bad mark on a test or having a bad day, it was like nowhere near as bad as like losing your life or having to go to a concentration camp.
Nobody deserves to have a number. Nobody deserves to not be treated like a real person and be treated so badly and get sent to concentration camps or have to leave their house within an hour or anything like that.
And if we can get as many stories as we can before everyone's gone, that would be as meaningful as possible, because when you just look at a page and you just see 6 million, that doesn't mean as much as every single story we've gotten from everybody who experienced all those like pains and suffering.
I believe that our goal as a school is to raise young Jewish leaders. You will go out into the world and you will make change. You will be representatives of who we are as the Jewish people. And I believe that these are the experiences that you will hold dear as you are young adults and adults, and will continue to carry on of telling these stories and hopefully being proud Jewish leaders in the world.
Okay, to make sure never again those horrible things happen, especially the young people. They have to step by step make sure. You cannot just sit and wait. It's not a wind. It won't be blown away.
You have to take their story and put it out in the world, so that everyone out there knows what happened to every survivor and everyone in the Holocaust.
My message to you is, don't forget. Educate yourself. And if you encounter somebody who denies it, then tell them where they can get information. This story has to be told from one generation to the next.
Stand on every corner of the city and tell them one story, because many people have no idea that all these things have happened.
We would always say, never again, never again. But ever since October 7th, never again is now. It's already repeated itself. So if we don't continue to share these stories, if we don't do something about it now, they'll just continue to repeat itself again and again.
Make life what you can make it. Just be healthy and happy and enjoy life. Life is short. Life is short.
To recognize and appreciate how lucky you are, that you are living here, you're living in a free country, and never ever to forget what other people went through during the Holocaust.
Love is stronger than hate. You cannot live with hatred in your heart all the time. This is something that my mother used to say in all her presentations, and it is my duty and privilege to repeat that message.
I have a torch which has got lots of flames, and it's called the torch of righteousness. No religious discrimination, no homophobia, no xenophobia, and above all, don't have any hate. I want you to give it to your families. I want you to spread it to whoever you can, and let those flames light up the world and make the world a better place. Let this world, drop by drop, become a new world, a world where there's no hate.
We'll share the story with people we know. We'll pass it down of what this person had to go through, what they did during the Holocaust. So it's never forgotten. We can never forget what these people went through.
Less than 70 years ago, the world of 6 million Jewish people came to an end in an act that is so evil that the only word that can describe it is Holocaust. I stand before you as a witness and a free man to tell all, never again. Never again to any and all genocides. Never again to racial hatred. Never again to a second Holocaust. Please stand up and take this pledge with me. We pledge to speak up against hatred and racism.
We pledge to speak up against hatred and racism.
We pledge to remember.
We pledge to remember.
Please put your hand over your heart and say, never again.
We pledge never again.
Sometimes I wonder, was it worth surviving? What achievements did we make? It seems to me that humanity hasn't learned a lesson. You have to make sure that the world is more tolerant to one another. No such thing as anybody is above you. Nobody should be below you. We don't have to love each other, but certainly we should tolerate each other. And the future is in your hands.